existing ADUs. There is de facto, okay? Essentially, you can use the ADU law, and we have, to deal with as-built structures. You know, you've got an existing garage you've converted, right? You can use the ADU law to make that a legal ADU unit. Now, you have to be really clear about what happened with the change in laws. They changed the planning laws to limit the discretionary ability of communities to turn away ADUs. They did not change the Uniform Building Code, which is the health, safety rules that essentially means how is it constructed, okay? So you can convert that ADU space, that as-built space into an ADU if you qualify, but you have to bring it up to code, okay? If you're happening to be in Pacific Grove and your property's in Pacific Grove, you're in the best of all worlds. First of all, you have a very supportive staff relative to ADUs, and this is an example of it right here. Second of all, we have water for ADUs. You know, Pacific Grove is one of the rare communities on the peninsula that has water available for ADUs, okay? So you can either retrofit down to gain water credits to the water district, or you can actually buy needed water for ADUs. And then you have very supportive staff in the building department. John has helped me on many occasions figure out various issues relative to making an ADU work. ADUs can go all the way down to 150 square feet. We built one on Granite Street, really converted a garage. It was, I think, 165 square feet, all the way up to 1,200 square feet, depending on the circumstances, okay? It doesn't really matter how much site coverage you have. As long as you can meet the setback and health safety issues, you can build up to 800 square feet. Now, staff can stop me on anything if I mention something incorrectly. There's all sorts of interpretations out there, but that's my understanding. And relative to FAR and site coverage, even if you've maxed it out, if that prohibits you from building at least an 850 square feet, and you could still meet the setbacks of the property that are needed, and setbacks have been reduced for ADUs, 4 feet in the back and 4 feet inside, it doesn't change the front setback, then you can build it. So I'll pass it on to the next speaker, but just understand, I think ADUs are an amazing opportunity for our residents.
Thank you so much, Craig. I really appreciate your input. Here is Oscar Mora.
As far as ADUs, I'm really excited to see the turnout today, because for us that are in the real estate business, we see the challenges out there with housing and the low inventory. And this is definitely something that it's a step in the right direction to see more housing available. And so when it comes to financing, it's just, you want to build an ADU. So you have the cash, and if you do, that's great. If you don't, then you can talk to us and we can help as far as refinancing, cash out. Take advantage of the lower rates while they're still here. There's already indication the last couple of days that it's going up. Federal Reserve had a meeting on Wednesday and started talking about tapering into the mortgage bond securities. We saw a little bit of an uptick in rates, and refinancing, cashing out is a very viable option while rates are low. Remember, you can always cash out up to 80% of the appraised value of your current home in order to build this ADU. As far as being able to finance the ADU separately, unfortunately, that's not really a possibility. You would have to do some sort of line of credit. Line of credits are also a great option, probably sometimes more viable option, but then you have to keep in mind those are rates that are variable rates. Eventually, you would have to combine your first and second. But very excited to see the turnout, and you know, kudos to Pacific Grove for putting this together, Amanda, because it's definitely something that is needed, and it's helping us with this housing crisis that we have. Very low inventory. Statistically, we're being told there's 10 million people in America looking for homes, and there's only 1 million homes available. So that just gives you a little bit of a perspective of what we're facing. So seeing some housing being, you know, this will help ease some of that, we hope.
So I'm going to give you some stats that, I don't know, blows my socks off. I mean, it's just unbelievable what's happening just in Pacific Grove. The average sale price last month was $1,537,000. That is up 33% year over year from last year in August. The median sale price, which is half above and half below, was $1,349,000. That was 41% year over year increase. So unbelievable numbers. Why is that happening, right? For Monterey County, $500,000 and under inventory, active inventory to sales. We have 109 units on the market, or did. That is the lowest we've seen in years. 500,000 to $1 million, for 175 units on the market. 1 million to 3 million, we have 181 units on the market. So again, it's the lowest inventory that we've ever seen. I've been in the business again about 15, 16 years, but I've seen 40-year veterans that are scratching their heads going, you know, we can't, it's unbelievable. So why is the housing stock at an all-time low? I'm a CAR director, California Association of Realtors. And for years, our CEO, Joel Singer, has been saying that California housing starts have been underdeveloped by 100,000 per year. So if we take 10 or 15 years of that, we're down 1 million to 1,500,000 homes that we don't have for people to live in. Nationally, NAR, National Association of Realtors, has said that we're down 5.5 million homes for people. So again, we have a huge housing shortage. And it will take, for NAR, we need 2 million units per year for the next decade, which is 60% higher production than what we've seen in 2020. So again, there's no end in sight in this. We have a housing shortage for sure. And especially affordable housing options, right? So where do people live? So the advantages of ADUs are they're a great opportunity for seniors, for singles, for professionals, teachers, medical profession, students. I've seen where seniors have lived in their houses, built an ADU, moved into the ADU, and their kids move into the houses, and they help them raise their children. I mean, what a gift is that for, you know, families, right, all the way around. It also helps owners offset the cost of their mortgages, their property taxes, and upkeep of the property. As we grow older and retire, I'm worried about, you know, am I going to have enough money 15 years after I retire to keep my house up? And I think people that are living in ADUs and JADUs are thinking out of the box already and are able to use alternative transit. So they're not afraid to ride the bus or ride their bike somewhere. So that allows the possibility of having more public transit come into play. And I think it helps build communities. I hear all the time that because we have a large population of second homes in our area, that our neighborhoods are quiet, dead, and nobody's around, right? So this is a possibility also of building that community back up and interacting with more people. I called in preparation for this meeting, I called different municipalities in our area just to see how many ADU permits have been issued. So the city of Carmel told me that they have had 25 to 30 applicants, but have issued 15 applications that have been submitted and approved. Of course, they cannot be short-term rentals. The city of Marina has had 10 or 11 applications approved in the last year, about 50-50 between ADUs and JADUs. There are deed restrictions on those properties that they cannot be sold separately. They also have to clear with Marina Coast Water, but that's not an issue because Marina right now has water. The city of Monterey has 10 to 15 applications that have been submitted and approved. People must have water in the city of Monterey because there is not extra water for sale. So retrofitting or extra water credits that they may have banked. Predominantly ADUs are being applied for versus JADUs. And they told me in October, the city council will hear an ordinance that if you're building an ADU over a garage, the height limit will be able to be increased potentially to 25 feet. So that's a great addition. The city of Seaside, which has heavily promoted ADUs, has issued 60 permits so far, which is amazing, right? I think it's a mix of JADUs and ADUs. They also have allocated a large amount of water for this ADU opportunity, and they've used about 45% of that water so far. So there's a possibility of another 60 to 65 or 70 units being able to go in. At permit approval, the owners have 1 year to build. And again, most applicants are for ADUs versus JADUs. They also have 3 designs in place. And if you pick one of those designs for your ADUs, it's a very streamlined process. And they have an architect or somebody that is solely dealing with that ADU potential. I knew that John would be here, so I didn't check in with the city of PG on how many permits have been issued.
We're at about 100, and we're right now at 100 that are current, either in application, under construction. We have about 25 more that have already been completed and final. I think a lot of that is due to the fact that we do have water.
As far as increasing the value of your property, obviously it's going to increase the value. I can't tell you exactly by what percentage. You know, it depends on location, condition, all the same things that go into the value of what your home would be without an ADU. And I can tell you that it will definitely increase clearly 25 to 30% potentially. And just the ability to have the additional income, I think, is a huge benefit. Thank you.
That was awesome. Thanks. So each site is a different size, more or less, because a house has been built on it that's not exactly the same. So a lot of what I do is research and plan. Like she's saying, the city of Seaside has these plans that are pre-approved, more or less, but you have to make sure that it can actually fit functionally on your site. So like if that doesn't apply to you, you have to find someone to create and generate drawings, the income need. So research at the city has to be done to make sure that you can check all the boxes. The design has to be created, make sure that you like it, and the water has to be checked out to make sure that you can either purchase the water or you can retrofit and upgrade your stuff to change it over to get the ADU to check out. And that's what we do. We work together all the way down to the end, and I pass it off to a structural engineer. Structural engineer is needed. I'm not a licensed structural engineer, but I know some awesome people that are, and they put the details in, and then you have a set of plans that can get approved by water, and also it can be, the contractor can bid off of it, and you can have a real solid budget. And along the way, we kind of work with the budget, but sometimes it's always good to get to the very end with some real numbers. But yeah, we just work away as we go until we get to the end. And timing is tricky. Everybody's busy right now. Designers are busy, architects are busy, contractors are busy. All the municipalities are busy. The construction industry is booming right now in a good way for everyone in it. But it does take a little longer than normal, I would say. You're looking at anywhere from 6 months to a year for permit. You have to keep that in mind as well. But do you have any specific questions? Or no, we're not there yet. Okay, all right, sorry. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Again, so Home Match, where do we come in? So again, we're a nonprofit organization. Our services are completely free. So if you're, for example, looking to build an ADU, a JDU on your unit, we would be able to come in, work with you, and essentially help with the marketing of that unit, and we would be able to help you fill that unit with potential applicants. So Home Match, what we do, just to throw another stat at you all, so basically in the top 25 housing markets, no problem. In the top 25 housing markets in the nation, there's an estimated 1.5 million available rooms that are currently unoccupied. So we're talking about, you know, the affordable housing crisis, right? There are multiple legs of that stool. We look at home sharing as one of those legs. So we're able to work with current housing stock and provide affordable units in the communities.
My job.
So essentially, we consider ourselves trust brokers, right? So we take that hairy, scary process of taking your available room or ADU, JDU, We take photos, we market it, we put it on our catalog, we put it on different housing sites, and then we screen seekers who are actively applying to our program looking for housing. The screening process, what does that look like? So we basically have a really comprehensive questionnaire. Our matching program is based on compatibility, so we look at people's wants, needs, lifestyle characteristics, and then we have a compatibility-based algorithm in our computer that helps us identify appropriate potential matches between providers, which would either be the homeowner or master tenant, and seekers, again, the person looking for that affordable room or accessory dwelling unit. And so then we run background checks on both the provider side and the seeker side. We ask for 3 references from both sides. We ask that at least 2 are non-familial. We also verify income so that that person moving into a unit would be able to cover the cost of their room each month. We also verify ID. In addition to that, we are there with you throughout that entire time that you're matched in our program. So we have what we call an LTA, a living together agreement. It's fairly comprehensive, about 18 pages currently. It's not that bad, I promise. So we are a free service, but we joke that you pay in paperwork, right? And so essentially what that looks like is once you find a potential match, you call each other, maybe connect in person if you're comfortable with that, call each other's references. Both sides say, yes, love it, totally want to move forward with this, let's go. Then we sit down and do the LTA process. We go over that agreement that hashes out different house rules, like what space is available to you in the kitchen, what settings are the thermostat set at regularly, who locks the door at night, what keys are provided to the seeker for what areas of the house. We also look into different things like legal terms and conditions, making sure everyone is well aware of what proper notice is and how to give and receive that proper notice. And we also have a provision within that LTA that essentially requires all parties involved in this agreement to identify a communication strategy. How are you going to communicate when a potential conflict arises? What are you going to do to address that conflict? And we take that a step further in that we reach out to you on a quarterly basis, make sure everything is going well, see if there's anything we can do. We do annual impact surveys, which we just got our last year's back, and we had, I believe it's 93% satisfaction in our annual impact survey with our current matches. And so if you do get to the point where there is a conflict that you're not able to address yourselves, we will step in and help mediate that conflict. I would say that that doesn't happen often because we do put a lot of time and energy into that compatibility-based matching process ahead of time, and we really do a lot of work at the outset of the move-in to mitigate any potential conflicts that may arise in sharing either your own home or your property via an ADU or JDU. So that said, I do have flyers and business cards over on the table if anyone's interested. And if you know of anyone who is maybe not able to look at the ADU, JDU situation for themselves currently, but might have an available room, again, we're available for that service as well. Thanks so much.
Thank you, everyone. I think this home match opportunity is amazing because it allows for some security in the fact that there is this program here locally that if you do take the time, money, and effort to build your ADU, there is something you guys can rely on to ensure that you have renters or that income that you're, hoping for to offset the cost of the ADUs. So thank you so much. And so we're going to actually show a video from Covia. Alex is going to help us with that. But in the meantime, we're going to go around and collect your question sheets. If you have any questions and filled it out, we'll collect them, we'll go through them, and then we will start the Q&A with our panel and get your specific questions answered. And then here's Anastasia.
Yeah, and I just wanted to recognize 2 more people have entered the room. We have Councilmember Coletti back here. Thank you for coming, Councilmember. And then I wanted to recognize Ben Nurse. He's my counterpart, Housing Program Manager, City of Seaside. And they're also building a lot of ADUs, and we connect and try to coordinate as much as possible on housing and bring as much to the community as we can. So thanks for coming, Ben. Awesome to see you. And Councilmember. Okay, and Yeah, we'll collect questions while the video runs. Go ahead, Alex.
Human beings are meant to care about each other. It is who we are fundamentally. And if we don't have that caring in our lives, we shrivel up. And it's so much of what's wrong in our society right now is this notion that people should be so independent as opposed to mutually dependent.
Older adults, they live in these homes that used to be filled with their families, and now it's mostly just them. And the number one reason for social isolation in the United States is living alone.
Many people want to stay in their own homes as they grow older. But how does someone do this without becoming isolated? One answer is home sharing.
Home sharing is when two unrelated people live together. So as opposed to a romantic couple, a partnership, a parent-child, it is when two people move in together and share the home. Your default sharing each other's lives.
There are people out there that don't own a house and you have a big house. Share your house if you have a big house. Why not?
The number of people over 65 who can't afford their rent is projected to rise by 42% in the next 10 years. With affordable housing in short supply, where will it go? An existing shared home provides lower rent for a home seeker and additional income for a home provider.
Especially people who are on fixed income, like people on disability, Social Security, SSDI, they often don't have great options when it comes to housing.
Fairfax Best Pocket, a group of 6 homes in Northern California, provides shared living for people with disabilities, single parents, and senior citizens. Each person has their own room and shares other community areas of the house. Rick Miles lived there for 5 years while waiting for his own affordable apartment for low-income seniors.
The cost of rental is very inexpensive and affordable. It's just a good intro to filling your needs at the moment. It's very, very needed and appreciated.
The idea of needing an affordable place to live and earning extra money is often a reason why people decide to do shared housing.
When Eve Stone decided to share her house, she went one step further. She created a junior additional dwelling unit, or JADU. JADUs don't exceed 500 square feet and are built within an existing family home.
I didn't need all that much room. My family wasn't here anymore. I just quartered off 2 bedrooms that happened to be together and also had private entrance into the garden. It became a little studio. Simple enough. If you're looking for a little extra income, it's there. And you don't have anybody in your house. You know, you still have your privacy. It just seems like it's developing more and more that these types of things are necessary. We need them.
Some people aren't used to sharing their home with anyone other than their own family who moved out long ago. For them, change is hard.
They're resistant because they're scared. It's daunting, the idea of having someone come into your house, someone that you don't know, a stranger. It interrupts your privacy and your way of living and that kind of thing. So they're fearful of strangers and what could happen, and people observing their way of living. It's like when my son comes over, "Oh, Mom, why do you have this? Why do you do this?" It's like, leave me alone. This is my house. One of the things that happens to people as they get older is that their lifelong friendships start disappearing. So a housemate is the kind of companionship, and new friends. It's new friends.
You're often that I started for the money, but I stayed for community. That it's all of a sudden, it wasn't scary having someone in the home. It's like, oh, wow, there's this person there. And this one lady's like, just hearing someone walk around in the house makes me feel comfortable that I'm not alone.
There are nearly 60 nonprofits across the country that offer home sharing programs. Covia, a partner of Front Porch, is the provider of services and housing for seniors in Northern California. Their shared housing program is called Home Match.
Home Match is like a dating service, but for roommates instead of for romance. And so we're a comprehensive, very personalized service where we work with you hand in hand to find just the right match for you. We have a long application you fill out to really understand your preferences, who you are. We interview you in person or visit your home because we really want to get a feel for that, your essence, because we're going to match you based on compatibility.
The idea of trying to find a roommate through Craigslist was making me insane. The anxiety that I was having of trying to find a stranger to live with, it's not the same as when you're in college or in school. And the intake forms, at first I go, whoa, okay, that's a lot. But you need to have a lot of information that you give them before they try and make a match, because you're trying to put two people together who don't know each other at all. And how are you going to make a good match if you don't have any information?
We spend 2 or 3 hours on a living together agreement where we actually sit down and talk about the nitty gritty details and set expectations up front about what the living situation is going to be like. So who's going to clean the bathroom? How often? What space in the refrigerator will they have? Can they have overnight guests? How many days? And what gender? Can it be a romantic partner? So we really make sure that expectations are set from the very beginning so that when they move in, there aren't surprises.
The key thing when they were interviewing each other was to pay attention to any red flags that started waving. Often people ignore that because they think that they're being picky. You know, oh, I'm being too fussy. It's really crucial because if they ignore a red flag, it's something that really is going on and they're going to have to deal with it sooner or later in the household.
It's very simple. The important thing is that the residents in a unit come together and just discuss what one needs and the other needs and so on, so that everyone feels free. Otherwise, it gets confined, it gets irritating, it gets annoying. It can either be an answer to your problem or a misery. One or the other.
Sometimes the tenant can do a trade of services, can drive the owner on grocery trips, doctor's appointments, errands, that kind of thing. Or they can cook for them, or they can walk their pet or garden or something. And then the rent is even reduced for.
It's not healthcare. So they can't be working with your medicine, helping you get out of bed, feeding you. So none of the activities of daily life. And the reason is most of the people that we're placing, they're not trained healthcare professionals. And so there's a liability and a risk if they were to undertake that. So if someone says, I want someone to cook me dinner 5 nights a week and clean the house, we say, okay. If you want someone to help occasional meal prep, if you can't, when one woman had a shoulder injury, couldn't do cleaning, that's fair. But it isn't something where there's a rigid schedule where they're an employee. It's a fine line, but we really try to draw that distinction.
If you have somebody that you live with, you have more opportunity for that kind of reciprocity of giving and receiving that we actually need.
It really gives me security to have somebody like you here.
Yeah. He fell one day, so I taught him how to get up.
It's scary. Oh, now think nobody's around.
Yeah. He's lonely when he's here by himself. And Home Match have given him secure that he's okay at nighttime because he don't hear very well. He don't see too far in front of him. And like he always say, you hear me when I wake up? Yeah, I hear you when I wake up. I said, I'm your ears and your eyes here. So Home Match has been good for both of us. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I hope that was educational and allowed you to learn a little bit more about the nonprofit. Just know this meeting is being recorded and will be posted. So, and this video itself is on YouTube under Covia's page. So if you do want to look at it and hear it a little bit better, sorry about the sound, but I hope you guys still were able to take a little bit from that video.
Really quick, we just wanted to talk about the city does have its own local water program, so we do have water available for ADUs. Alex, can you go back a couple of slides? Good, yes. So we do have some water available. I got into some technical stuff in here, you know, about how much water it takes to build certain, you know, types of multi-family development. Usually is about 0.12 acre feet. ADUs are usually 0.07 acre feet. This is all technical. What it means is if you're to build an ADU, what we're finding is it's about $7,000 to $10,000 for water credits, to purchase water credits from the city. And you can do that to build your ADU. Does any other staff have anything about water you want to mention? Ben, can I put you on the spot? How much water do you guys have available?
Seaside, we still have around 3¼ acre feet, which could be roughly 70 to 80 or 70 ADUs.
Okay.
And the other thing I mentioned there is that by retrofitting toilets, dishwashers, washers, you're likely to pay less because they require less costs.
Great. Okay, I'm coming to you, Cassandra.
Maybe Craig knows this, or Ben. Like, I know the city of Seaside has a time, the city of Seaside has like a time stamp on the water. Does the city of Pacific Grove also have a time stamp to use it? Anybody have to say anything?
Honestly, what do you mean by timestamp? With the permit, once they pull the permit, they have so much time to get that water used.
Yes, it's in our ordinance. We have an ordinance about the water and there's detail in that ordinance. What is the ordinance? Do you know it offhand?
I don't know it offhand.
I don't know it offhand, but we can email it out. We have your email. Or you can call in and we'll let you know. But the ordinance details all those intricacies of the water. There's a lot in there, but and you do need to show progress and that you're going to use it within a certain time. So yeah, there is a time frame in which you need to use the water and milestones.
I'm sorry, I'm very hard of hearing and I can't see very well. And so I'm wondering if this is going to be printed out in some way so that I can review it for its purpose. The other thing is my question about water is I understand, and I'm not sure of this, but we only had 8 inches of rain this year and we're in a severe drought in the state of California. When I first moved to Pacific Grove in 1972, I asked the city of Pacific Grove if they would please include in all their buildings permits in the future or remodels some sort of water catchment for gray water. And at the time, they told me it wasn't feasible because they couldn't charge for it, nor put the chemicals in if they needed. Now we're in a drought and we are in a housing crisis. And we need these things, and so that might be something else that we have to address and look at in Pacific Grove.
Let me make sure you get. Okay, okay. All right, we're gonna hold more questions because we've got the questions, most of the questions here that we want to go through that everybody wrote down, and then we can get to more questions in a bit. Okay, thank you so much for the info and water. So do you want to get to questions here?
Okay, perfect. So we got a bigger turnout than we expected, as I said before. So I know 45 of you were able to fill out the pre-survey workshop. So it's really important those same 45 people are able to fill out the post-survey workshop. Would you mind raising your hand if you were able to fill out that pre-survey worksheet, please? So Carrie's going to go around and pass those out, and then we are going to move on to the Q&A with our panelists. So I have everyone's questions here and that filled it out. They'll be able to answer. They'll pass it around based on question type. And then if we have any extra time, I will be able to gather some additional questions, but we're going to go off the ones that were written here. Thank you so much.
The question is, They didn't tell us what the questions were ahead of time, so that's good.
You probably know, Ray.
You have one that's appropriate to the next slide.
That's cool.
It's not a more appropriate.
Talk a little bit about permits.
Okay, actually, John would be better talking about permit fees, but generally, there's no planning fee for the most part on an ADU, because you don't go through the planning process, is my understanding. You go directly to the building department, okay? So the building department does kick it back to the planning department to make sure it meets the criteria for an ADU. But generally speaking, you don't have to do that. And let's talk a little bit about some of the things. Well, one is that for the most part, the cities are not allowed to charge impact fees on ADUs. So an impact fee is like a development impact fee. If the ADU is 700 square feet or under, you do not have to pay those fees. That was one of the things that some cities in the past have been using to make it prohibitively expensive. If there's a school tax and your ADU is under 500 square feet, you don't have to pay that either. Okay. Doesn't mean you can't opt to. You could kick in some money for the city and the schools if you want to, but it's all done to make sure that it makes providing an ADU a little less expensive. John, did you want to add to the building fees? Building permit fees?
Building permit fees are based on the cost of the project. Now, in some of these retroactive permits, what we try to do is take a look and see how much time it's going to take us to actually process and complete the inspection. So it's not always a hard line fast rule on the cost. If you're building a brand new building, it's really going to be based on the value of the new building. If some of these retroactive permits are really based on what it's going to take in order to get it permitted.
The next question here I have deals with cost for ADUs, and it's a very specific question, but I'm going to generalize it, okay? So let's look at the different types of ADUs, okay? Just from the least expensive to the most expensive ADU. The least expensive ADU to build or create is a JADU. You're essentially carving space out of your existing home. Now, there are things you have to do. You have to put a fire-safe wall between you and the existing mode, so the rest of the house, essentially. You have to provide at least a mini kitchen in the property. But traditionally what happens is we take the end of the house that's already a master bedroom with a master bathroom, right? So you don't have to add those, you don't have to do much to that. We add some fire sheetrock wall to separate the two structures. We provide an exit out the back, but sometimes there's already an exit, right? Because that's the back of the building, so they've got an exit out to the garage. And we add what is essentially a mini kitchen in it. It's a piece of furniture, really. It has a sink, a stove, a fridge, all as one unit. You can put it in. It's all 120. There's no gas involved. And then we put some sort of kind of like a mini split heater in there. It's a good way to go with these smaller units. So that's the least expensive. I'm doing one over in Salinas right now that we're just getting ready to start on. We managed to get that all the way down to $50,000–$60,000. That was difficult, but we were able to do it. Okay. The next step up is creating either an ADU out of a garage or some sort of auxiliary building. Now, you can do that, but garages and auxiliary buildings are often not up to UBC code, right? Uniform Building Code. So that could mean we might have to upgrade the framing. We're certainly going to have to upgrade the insulation. You have to make it conditioned space. Oftentimes there's structural things to do, but generally speaking, you have a roof, you have a basic structure. If you're converting an existing either attached or detached garage, that's the next less expensive to go, and that's a highly desirable unit, right? Because then you don't have, well, even JADU has to have a separate egress, so there's a separate way to go into the house than the regular house. There's more privacy in an attached garage, or even more so in a detached garage. Then the most expensive is either an attached ADU that you're building, right? You're creating a wing of the building that's going to be an attached ADU to the existing building, or a completely detached. And those are going to follow very closely the full cost of building a remodel. In the area right now, it can be anywhere from $350 to $550 for moderately nice properties. You can go down, but you have to choose surfaces like Formica or fiberglass shower stalls or things like that that would bring the cost of your down to a simple wall heater instead of a fancy mini split. But generally speaking, it's going to be $350 to $450 for those, maybe even a little higher for a completely detached. So the least expensive way is to go JADU. Next is an attached ADU, converted garage that is either attached or detached ADU. Okay, and we already talked about what the difference is between an ADU and a JADU. Height limit, I think right now 16 feet in Pacific Grove, and I think that's statewide standard. Someone pointed out to me that there are differences in the ordinances. Okay, so the state put together their minimum standards. Okay, they, like for instance, the state says the max setback can be 4 feet. Okay, but that doesn't stop a local district from saying, oh no, we think it can be 3 feet. Okay, and that's what Pacific Grove's done. They've narrowed the setbacks down to 3 feet. So that's why there's difference in ordinances. What essentially I've been told is that the local districts can lessen the standards. Like for instance, Monterey is considering allowing detached ADUs above garage to go over the 16-foot height that the state allows. Why? Because the Fonzie kind of above garage ADU is a perfect place to put one. But you still would have to bring that up to standards. And in a single-story garage, that means you're going to have to redo the framing. You might have to do some foundation work. You might have to do a lot of different things. That's that. We must have a question for somebody else.
All right, and here's Oscar.
The question is there any assistance or loan programs for ADU specifically? Not at this moment, not from the lending side or Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac as far as identifying particular programs specific to ADUs. It's more of just your typical refinance cash out, looking at what the current main unit, what the value of that home is, and then obviously looking at what budget or how much money you need, and then we work our ways there. That's appraised value and how much of that loan to value we're going to need, and then running the numbers and seeing if that makes sense for you. But as far as a particular program for ADUs, like I mentioned, home line credits on the house, or refinancing the first mortgage and cashing that out, taking advantage of today's rates.
I get that. Just in general, how do people pay for ADUs? Sometimes they are using funds they start with themselves. Sometimes they're using their we build shells, and then they go further and do some of the elbow work themselves. And then you have to consider like who's going to live in it. If it's going to be your elderly parent, okay, look to them to get involved investing in it. Provide some of the funds in lieu of paying any rent. Or if you're, that can be a good, looking to whoever's potentially going to use it and benefit from it. So, but there are some programs out there. I don't have them right here, but not available commercially, but through various other organizations.
So my question is, a couple questions. Does the addition of an ADU increase your property value? Yes, obviously it is going to increase the property value. You can imagine if you have a 2-bedroom, 1-bath main home and you're adding a 1-bedroom, 1-bath, the value of that is just going to increase enormously. So again, I can't determine right now without seeing the property, knowing the location and condition, it is definitely going to increase the value of your property. How much would a 2-bedroom, 2-bath ADU get per month in Pacific Grove? Again, it depends on what the demand is at the time, but I'm thinking that you can get anywhere between 25, 28, and I'm probably low, right? So that's $2,800 a month. And again, I think I'm being conservative. It'll change, of course, if it's your family member or, you know, if you had somebody in there for a long time, those things are going to change, but I'm sure right now that that's what you can get. I was on a committee for our state association back about 5 years ago, where we were just starting to talk about ADUs. And the city of Los Angeles at the time was going through a process of approving 4 or 5 different types of ADUs, as the city of Seaside has done. And when people were buying the properties, they had the ability to then take a loan out for that construction ahead of time. They pre-picked what they wanted, so it was all set up. The process was a little bit longer in purchasing the property, but they had loans in place that you could get at that time, and I thought it was very proactive of the city of Los Angeles doing something like that. So I think we all should be looking at those options too, and as this progresses, I'm sure that those things will be available soon.
Okay, this is, I think, asking about like a flow sheet, kind of like a graphic outline for steps for starting the project. And ultimately, it would be funding. You would really want to identify that first. That's the ultimate kicker. And the numbers that Craig's talking about are fully realistic. Like entry level would be 50 to 60, and then up to $500,000 for sure. There's a lot of things to consider. And then once you've got that, the benefit is, which is to this next question about streamlining the plans. When you have a scope of work that is, the scope of work is to build an ADU or to convert a garage into an ADU, you're immediately out of the planning department. So, well, not out of the planning department, excuse me. There's planning, that's one world, and there's building, that's the other world. Way back when, a few years ago, you have to do both and make sure that you got those approvals. What's happening is the benefit is that building's going to take it first, and then they're just going to double check with planning and back. But you're not going to pay that like architectural review board fee and go through all the meetings at the planning department like you had to. So as far as streamlining, that's the best that they're going to give you, which is way more than it was. But it's not going to go any faster, further, better. And like I said, there's no pre-approved plans, but also that's tricky, and it's a very loaded sentence to say that you have pre-approved plans because it might not fit on your property. And the other one, this is saying the allowable square fee is 800, which I think it can actually be more. Can it be more than 800?
It can be more.
Yeah, okay. And then is it based on the lot size? No, it's the state ADU regulations that are also can be adjusted to each city and district. And then what is the average architectural cost? So every project is different. That being said, if you have an existing structure with a garage and it's staying in that exact same footprint and it's really obvious where the door is and where the bathroom is going to be and the kitchen, you could potentially do like a $10,000 permitting fee, or sorry, plan set. But once you get out of that like really obvious footprint and you start designing a building, you can go to 20,000. You can go to 30,000. I mean, I would hate to say that something costs more than $30,000. I'm not a licensed architect, so my fees are adjusted differently, but figure anywhere from 10,000 to 30,000. That would be your window of permitting and fees. What is the support I can get from the planning division? So the planning division is already giving us a lot of support by not making us go through the architectural review board. So yeah, I think beyond that, you can contact the planning department. You can research your property. You can find out what your setbacks are. It's all public record. They'll give it to you. Will you know what to do with it afterwards? As far as generating a drawing, like that would be where architects, designers, contractors, they come in. But the planning division is helpful to a point. But I think I answered all of that.
Nice job. So I think my question is fairly straightforward. I think it's looking at is the cost of a unit in our program home match below market rate. So I would say generally yes, it could potentially be right at market rate, but we shoot for below market rate. This is affordable housing. In addition to that, We work with folks who do not make more than 120% AMI. So in Monterey County, that's $65,550 for one individual annually. And what we do with our rooms is, again, keep in mind, we're working with folks on the provider side who generally are coming to this program because they're potentially on fixed income. Maybe they're house rich, cash poor, and they're struggling to make their own ends meet. And so we need to look at what the unit is that they're offering, whether it's a room itself, what amenities are involved, what the size is, what market rate for that unit would be. And then we shoot for something lower. But again, keeping in mind that this is also a fee that provider is looking for to help them with their own living expenses as well. And then just in addition to that, I would say we do have a service exchange that was briefly mentioned in the video. So if there is a service exchange element involved in the program, that would then decrease the cost of the unit even further.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. As mentioned, this is like much bigger turnout than we were expecting. So the interest in ADUs is really great. Everybody build one. That's what we want.
Yeah, that's out there.
So just a couple of clarifying comments. The way to go the super easy route and to just deal with the building department with what we call a ministerial building permit is to check out the ordinance and design your ADU so that it meets all of the standards of the ADU ordinance. You can go above and beyond, but once you go above and beyond, then you get to deal with the planning department. That's me. So there's still a lot of flexibility. It's not the end of the world, regardless of what you might have heard. So let's see. Like Craig was mentioning, thanks for doing the good presentation on the difference between the ADU and the JADU. If you wanted to build, for example, a second story ADU, so totally independent space, but on the second story, like the Fonzie example, at this point in the city of Pacific Grove, you do still have to go to the through the architectural permit process and go to the ARB. So we haven't gotten so far along that line, but it is possible. We still encourage it. It's a viable option for a lot of properties. I do want everybody to check out our ADU website on the city's overall website and the community development page. We have a lot of information. We have our existing ordinance. We have the state's ADU and JADU guidelines handbook. We have a step-by-step process to help walk you through. So a lot of these questions are like, what are the steps? We have it on our website. I have a question about requirements for ADU rental. Certainly you can rent your ADU. It does need to be for 30 days or longer. So we do not allow short-term rentals in ADUs. It does not have to be formally income restricted. We're not requiring deed restrictions. We're not requiring right now that the unit be rented in the official affordable rate, where that's based on income qualifications and a whole bunch of other rules. So right now there is no income requirement.
I have a quick question on that one. We've never really hit on it, but the SDRs and the 30-day rentals, all the reasons that we said that those were not good are all the reasons we're saying that these are good. I mean, it's the exact opposite. Traffic, noise, I mean, you name it. We said it was a horrible thing. We voted it out. And then now we're doing the exact same thing.
Well, let me talk about that for a little bit, because why I support ADUs, okay? So first of all, you have to look at, we built a lot of these houses right after World War II, right? When families had 2 to 4 people, right? They were people coming home from the war, they needed homes for themselves and the 2.5 kids that were planning on happening. Well, right now, nationwide, most households, 60% have less than 2 people in it. Okay, so there are already less people living in those homes right now. They're living in homes that are too big for them, right? That's why JADUs make so much sense, right? People who live in ADUs and JADUs often don't bring in new cars into the property. And why a lot of people opposed short-term rentals was because it's a continually different set of people that don't live in your community, that don't know you, that are there for a few days, and they think of it as a party house. They're here for a vacation, they're having a lot of fun, and I'm saying a good short-term rental operator, make sure they deal with that. But the ones that didn't ended up with way too many, that's very disruptive for a neighborhood. You don't know who's going to be in your house next door, and it's a different person next week or the next day.
About 30 days.
Well, 30 days, how many people are going to rent a vacation for 30 days? And if they do, certainly they do, but it's even then, at least you get to know them for 30 days.
We found that we're here to find out.
Yeah,
thank you. Thank you. Just a couple other items to wrap up my part here. John, the building official, does want to point out that, of course, it's important for us to look at your individual site before you start calling all of these people who have been awesomely volunteering today. All properties are different. Our properties in Pacific Grove, many of them are very small and they're therefore constrained. Especially if you're interested in converting a garage or other currently not habitable space, it's really important to call the building department because, like Craig and John both said, anything will have to meet current building code. So that can make it easier or it can make it a little bit harder.
Thank you.
The amnesty program, somebody asked earlier, we don't technically have an amnesty program, but we do want to bring perhaps a garage that somebody had converted in the past without permits. We do want to bring that up to code for public health and safety reasons. So we're not going to penalize people for coming in if you have an illegal ADU like in the olden days. We're trying to get people to really come forward and get the building permit that's required to bring it up to code so it's safe for occupancy. We have no limit so far on how many ADUs we'll permit. We'll permit them as long as we have water for sale, and right now we still have plenty of water for sale. And my last comment does have to do with water. As we all know, water is very complicated. Our planner, Laurel O'Halloran in our office, has done a fantastic job organizing all of the water sales. If you are very serious about pursuing an ADU or a JADU and you know you have to buy additional water, please call her. She's easily contactable. She can help you kind of figure out what the cost is going to be based on what fixtures you need and that kind of info. And I think that's all for me. John had a couple of follow-up comments.
We've got some questions here that are really case specific, and we could be here forever if I looked at each question for each individual building. But just in general, what we've learned over the last several years with these is probably this is a ton of information and it's changed over time. So if you were to call our office first, and what I've encouraged folks to do is call and set up an inspection with me. I can do an inspection of what you'd like to do. And then I can lay out, here's what you're gonna have to do. And then you can get the professionals here to draw your plans, to build it, so that you don't, we've had some where I just said, this isn't gonna work. So it doesn't work in every case. There are some tool sheds that people think they can just all of a sudden put their shingle out and I can live in this. We've seen a lot of creative use of buildings in the city of Pacific Grove. This has been a super good tool in order to bring these into health and safety code. That our goal is to make your property safe for somebody to live there. Another question that was on historic buildings, and we take those case by case. There is a historic building code that we can use. It really depends on which of the elements that you need to do in order to comply with the code requirements. So our office is there to do these inspections, and I found them to be really helpful. It streamlines the process so that what happens sometimes is we get a generic plan that may meet health and safety requirements, and then when we go to do the inspection, it doesn't match, and then it doesn't work. And then the person is not so happy with us, but there's minimum standards that the state is set with the building code as well as the ADU stuff. And our goal is to make it safe. So use us as a resource. We're there to help you. We're not there to go after and say, hey, this isn't going to work. I will always be honest. So if I go to the site and the site's not going to cut it, I don't want you to spend $10,000 or $20,000 on a set of plans that's not going to work, or to get a contractor to go, hey, you're gonna dump way more money into this. So use us. And there was another question on trees. The ADU ordinance doesn't exempt other requirements. It doesn't mean you can do an ADU, means you can cut all the trees down you want. So the tree ordinance is there for a reason. So we've had folks that think, hey, this is a discretionary or a ministerial permit. I don't need to get a permit for a tree. That's not true. So if you got to cut a tree down, then you need to go through that process. So hopefully that helps, but it is complicated, and we've seen great success, and we've got some really good ADU examples, and it really works.
Thanks, John. Just a couple more comments that popped into my head. Big picture of things, I think everybody knows that all of these ADU rules are coming down to the cities from the state. And the state, of course, every year is changing their own rule. So our planning commission right now is working on updating and amending our existing ADU ordinance to try to keep it, up to date and in compliance with state law. So just note that we're working on that right now. Just forgot the other thing I was going to say. I think that was it. If I remember the other thing I was going to say, I'll be sure to share it. But on to Anastasia.
Thank you. All right, I know we do have a few more questions out there. So again, this ADU workshop is focused on these factors in development. So please keep your questions related to our ADU focus here. So these are the 4 things. We've got financing, property value, and housing stock impacts, design process, permitting, contracting, water. We've got Alyssa here from Home Match. So if you have any questions for her, let us know. Ben's here. I already asked him. I said, if there's anything you want to add, my counterpart, that'd be great. Go ahead.
I remembered.
Question.
Hold on. I wanted to just address, somebody was asking about pre-approved plans. City of Seaside has pre-approved plans, and many jurisdictions in California are doing that. We have considered that, and it's not an absolute no at this point. We have been talking about it internally. Our lots as I mentioned before, many of our lots are so small and we do have a lot of constraints on properties in the city. So at this point, we haven't pursued going through the process of developing pre-approved plans just because they wouldn't be particularly useful. I think Cassandra, put it very eloquently when she was like, you have to look at a case by case basis and see what's already on the ground and kind of work with that. So I just wanted to address that question.
Thanks. Ben, do you have anything to say about the pre-approved plans?
I can.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Thank you. If some of you know, in Seaside, we have a set of pre-approved plans developed by Workbench, and it's basically 3 different variations of the same footprint. So the footprint itself is about 540 square feet. And as she mentioned, in Seaside, we have lots ranging from 3,000 to 6,000 square feet. That large building doesn't work in a lot of those 3,000 square foot lots. And again, it's expensive as well to build because it's a detached unit. So it works for some property owners, but not all. So what other cities have done, and the city of Seaside put forth the money to develop the plans to kind of spearhead and get a jump on the ADU process. And it was really exciting. Other cities such as San Francisco or Portland or out in the Fresno area, what they've done is they've basically pre-approved architectural plans. So they worked with many different architects. In San Jose, they've done this, and they had them develop smaller or various plans, various sizes, 1 bedrooms, 200 square foot units, 500, 400 square foot units. And the public could then choose from one of those plans, and they might pay the architect $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, and so on to license that product. We've been contacted by a number of architects who would like to do the same thing here in Seaside, so we're considering that approach. So that way the city doesn't have to take on the cost, but we can at least allow for a variety of plans to be available to the public. So that's something that we might be considering.
Thank you, Ben. Okay, I'm going to get to questions now. Sorry, I know you've had your hand up. I'll come back around here.
Just a reminder panel surveys.
Right, and again, remember, so for Amanda's sake, CSUMB student, she's actually those pre-survey and post-survey. She's going to use that for her paper and her capstone. So it really helps us if you fill them out. Thank you so much. Okay,
I just have a question. I just read recently, within the last week, that Governor Newsom signed into law SB 9, which affords houses in California to have as much as 4 ADU units. And I'm wondering if Pacific Grove has had a chance to review and analyze this to present it with your ADU presentation.
Yeah, we're not at this point tackling SB 9 in this workshop, so we'll do another workshop.
Sorry, there's something that we haven't talked about, the Title 24 regulations on the buildings too. So like a heads up to anybody that's going to build a totally new structure, you're going to be required to do solar. And so then what happens sometimes is people go, oh, well, if I've got to do solar, then I might as well do solar on the whole property. And so like, then you're going to budget again for that. This is worth mentioning. There's also some other stuff. Do you have a question?
No, that was a great question. We'll tackle SB 9 later. All right.
I have a question about meters, utility meters. So do you do separate meters or there's fees? And does the city talk about what you're zoned for as far as that?
So you have options, basically. You can, for electrical, you can do sub-meter, okay? Or you can share a meter and then bifurcate the bill however you want. I believe because of the PUC directive, we're not allowed to set new water meters for residential. So I don't think you can get a new water meter for your ADU, but you can get a sub meter, which is, one that you could add on afterwards. Fees vary, but you're not supposed to be able to be charged impact fees, even if more on 700 square feet or less.
So a sub meter would be.
It's just a meter that keeps track of how much water that unit uses or how much electrical that one unit uses. Yeah, well, it'd be one bill, but you'd know how much was being used by that. Most people just say, all right, you're gonna pay this X amount. And I will say one thing about the solar too, which is since these units, the new units, detached units are solar, a lot of times you'll see with an ADU, we go all electrical. Don't bring in gas at all. Okay, because then you save all the expenses of that. Yes, gas is a little less expensive to use, but once you factor in the electrical, the solar, no.
John, do you have anything to add?
Just on the water meters, the electric and gas meters, if you want to work with PG&E to split those, that's approved. If you want to get another address, we've allowed an additional address. For the water meters, the way that the water district is, any time you get a dwelling unit, the water district has to issue a water permit, and they do that for their own tracking reasons. And what they've required is that on the house side, so on the side that the water feeds your house, they ask for it to be it's split so that the water pipe in the future, if water meters do come back and get approved, that they can put a water meter for the accessory dwelling unit.
Hopefully it's a wet.
But again, remember, we get so many different types. That's very simple for a detached accessory dwelling unit. It becomes a lot more complicated with one that's within the dwelling.
Thank you, John. Okay, what is your question now? Do houses with the plaques have additional requirements?
Yes, answer is yes.
So the plats are a program of the Heritage Society. They're not actually a city thing at all. They do not mean that the house is actually on the historic resources inventory. Currently, state ADU law does not take into consideration locally registered houses, only properties that are on the state register. So if you have a house on the HRI, the way that we're interpreting that right now is you can do an addition to your house that's on the HRI without needing to go through the same process as we have before, if it's an ADU that meets the ADU ordinance. So different than I just want to do a regular old addition to my HRI house, it has to be an ADU. Or in cases where you're converting existing space into a JADU, you do get a little bit of exterior addition for access to that unit.
And are there any geographical restrictions, like certain areas of PG that you cannot put an ADU?
Not that you cannot put an ADU, but in the coastal zone, of course, it's more complicated. So right now you would be required to go through a coastal development permit process for an ADU if your property is located in the coastal zone.
Do we have any questions regarding finance or property value specific? All right, and then we have a question here.
This is kind of subjective to me, but owning a large building home, I have a 14,000 square foot lot and a 2480 home. Is it possible to do a lot split? I mean, where does the deal between an ADU and a residence start and begin? In this case, could a lot lot split be done?
Build the home.
Yeah, I'd be happy to talk with you about this question separately. It completely depends on where your property is located, in what zoning district, water, of course. Lot split is different than an ADU, so you could potentially build a detached ADU on your property without subdivision.
When all of this news hit the pine cone.
That's SB9.
That SB9, yeah, and that's a separate.
Suggest that lot splits with the same goal for housing, lot splits were.
Yeah. Right, so that is a totally different state law that just came out, and we're not prepared today to start talking about SB9. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions specific to our panelists? Over there. Raise your hand again, I forgot your.
I just wanted to clarify that an efficiency kitchen is not a mini kitchen. An efficiency kitchen requires a cooking appliance, which could be a microwave or a toaster oven, doesn't have to be an oven, and that you only need a 3/4 bath.
What was the last part?
You only need a 3/4 bath.
3/4 bath.
It was like, you don't have to have a tub shower, just one or the other, and a sink.
Do any of our panelists have anything to add to that statement or questions?
You have to have a full bathroom.
No.
3/4 bath.
Let's hear from our designer.
Yeah, I think I'm understanding you correctly. You definitely need a toilet in the bathroom. You definitely need a shower or a tub. It could be a shower stall or a tub.
Right.
And then when it comes to the sink, that's where maybe I'm understanding you.
You need a toilet, sink, and a shower.
That's a bathroom.
But you don't need a shower tub.
No, you can have a shower stall. You don't have to have a tub, right? Am I getting closer?
You're right there, that's right.
Okay.
And then
have one thing. For
So
the kitchen and the.
that is a design that I have toyed with, where the sink is a shared. So you're trying to avoid having to purchase more water or retrofit a bunch of stuff to get it. So like, if the location of the sink is just such that it can be accessed from the bathroom and the kitchen, it is, I've gotten it to where it's been approved. I've never had it built that way, so I've got to do full disclosure on it. It's gotten me yeses, but like in reality, it's a little funky because you're brushing your teeth where you're washing your dishes, and it's a too much almost for asking for one zone. So like, if you can, go for it. But if it's absolutely like gonna break the budget and the project would be stopped by it, it would definitely be something to consider. There is a way to design around that scenario. Did I answer that? I think that's right, John. So one of the planning, I got it approved through one of the planning people.
We've done that.
Yeah.
Before, we built that unit in the Civic Grove that had it, that used, that had a toilet and a shower in one room, and then a sink that was right in the next room that was for the kitchen and the toilet. So, and my understanding with JADUs is you can actually share a bathroom with the house. You don't actually have to have a separate bathroom in the JADU. Most 99% of people do. Let me get probably more than 99%, but you don't have to.
Thank you both for your insight on that. I have a question from over here. She asks, is there information on the ADU solar requirements on the city ADU website?
So the solar question does come up pretty frequently. The California Energy Commission has pretty much said when it's a new building, it's considered new construction. New construction requires a solar system. There are exceptions to that. We've used that in this community. When you're in a heavily shaded area or you're not going to get a lot of sun, it's a case-by-case situation. the way that they consider an accessory dwelling unit within an existing structure, it's a remodel per their standards. It does not require a solar system.
Thank you.
How is the property tax being changed due to the ADU addition?
Does any panelists want to take on that? Property taxes with ADU additions? We have John.
Here's what I think, and it's really, we don't assess property taxes. That's through the assessor's office. We send the permits to the assessor's office, so it's really best suited for them. I don't know what their layout is of how they assess that.
But I can just speak generally to that. Generally, they consider it new construction. So they look at the valuation of the project and they add it. They don't seem to be at this point looking at the increased income that might produce. They didn't look at that. They're just looking at the valuation of property. I think that may change as they see it. But right now, I think they just consider you added a new room. You added a new room in the bathroom.
Thank you. Any other questions? We got one back here.
Do all of the ADUs have to be compliant with ADA?
Well, with the applicable ADA.
The Americans with Disability Act is a federal law that only triggers 3 apartments or 4 condominiums. So depending on the situation, they've made a ruling that it does not trigger. Now that doesn't mean forever. So if it's a multi-family complex, we've not gotten one of those. So the question is floating out there, but for the ADUs, junior ADUs, it generally doesn't impact them.
Thank you. Additional questions? One over here.
I read somewhere where the city would do an ADU consultation, come and look at your property and kind of do an assessment, kind of give you feedback. And we're just starting out. Is that something that is done? And if so, how would you schedule?
That's for John.
Yes, we've offered that. We found over time that doing that saves everybody time and energy at the end. So you can, my cards are back there. If there's still some cards, you can contact the building office. City Hall is open. You can go into City Hall and say, I'd like to set a meeting to go over a potential ADU, and we'll get that set up for you.
Questions? Any other questions? Is there anything else our panelists would like to add based on questions being asked or anything you have mapped out? Okay, we'll start with Craig.
So let me talk to you about our process, how we do it basically. So usually it starts with a phone conversation. That's usually free. People just call me up and I talk about what their vision is and what their project is. Next thing we do is what we call an initial consultation, and we charge for that. We come to your property, look at your property, determine what you want, and then go back to the city and water and whoever else might be involved and get some general ideas of whether we think the project is feasible. It's not the stamp that you're done, but that's a good idea. And so we're looking at whether or not you can get water for the project, whether or not, what are you going to have to do relative to upgrading your electrical, your plumbing, how easy is it going to be to get those things. And those are going to be general ideas because we're not digging into it. We're not going to cover the walls, but we'll have a good idea. Okay. That's usually $500. And then the next step is what we call a pre-con. And that basically is say, hey, we want to move forward on this. And we hook up with one of our designers and we start in the process. It's really a 4-part process where We're doing, discussing what you want, putting it on paper, getting it to building, and getting it through the process. Every project is different. There is no answer for everything. There's lots of overlays. There's environmental overlays depending on where your property may be located. Coastal zone is just one of them, but there's seismic zones, there's flood zones, those all affect your project, okay? There's viewshed areas. If your project not in Pacific Grove and you're out in the county somewhere, then there are septic issues. You have to have at least 2 acres if you want to build an ADU on an existing property in most cases, okay? So there's a lot of very specific issues relative to every project. That's the essence of why you need somebody at some point to help you through that process. Then the process with the city is we get them a set of building plans. They kick back to us what the issues are. I found that process usually takes about 6 months. You know, not from the city's point of view, but through discussion with the clients, getting everything on paper, getting into finalizing this is what we want, because you don't want a lot of changes after you've submitted. Those are called change orders, and those are going to be expensive. And then once we submit to the building, that's when we put together a schedule of values, a budget for that project. And at that point, you'll know how much the project's going to cost and whether you want to go for it. And then you can use the plans to either go with us or somebody else, another general contractor, whatever. That's kind of the general process.
Thank you, Craig. Do you have anything to add, Oscar?
No, I'm just very informational. Thank you. I'm learning myself a lot of information, and thank you, Amanda, for having us on the panel, and great job, great turnout.
Thank you so much. Arlene, is there anything you would like to add?
So I deal with all the municipalities, with problems. I'm always going to them with problems. And I have to say that Pacific Grove, I hear a lot of things about City of PG, but honestly, I think Pacific Grove is the most approachable building and planning department. I might not always like what they have to say. They are, you can talk to them, they're reasonable, have a conversation with them. And so it's the best, you're in the best hands here, I think. And I would also say that, start off with consultation with a professional. So instead of trying to cut corners, because it always comes back to you in the end, right? You're always going to pay more because you try to cut corners. So anyway, that's my thoughts. Thank you.
One other thing that we've worked our way all the way through the permission, the waste lines. So depending on where your building potentially is or really is, that wastewater has to go somewhere. So that's another cost to consider and a location item. Sometimes you need an ejector pump. Sometimes you need to tie into the waste line. Like how is all of that going to work out? So, all the way from the roof down into the ground. Just wanted to add that one too, if you're potentially thinking about it.
And I'll just say, again, if you either have an ADU, if you're looking to build an ADU, or even available room in your home, please give me a call. Let us know, and we can walk you through the process to get you started in marketing your unit and getting it filled.
Thank you. Before we close the panel discussion, is there any last minute questions that you would like answered?
Hi, I was wondering if you have an existing structure that you're already renting to people that are looking for housing, and you're just trying to get it up to compliance, will the city help with that process and streamline everything so you don't have to evict or avoid turning away people that are looking for this much needing housing in Pacific Grove?
Case by case.
Yeah, again, it is always a case by case and it depends on the specific circumstances, but we do always everything we can to, depending on the situation, we're going to expedite bringing something up to code as quickly as we can. We don't want evictions. We do what we can to make sure public health and safety requirements are met. And we're always trying to work with people to the extent we can.
Thank you. And I'm going to get your question there.
So I think it would be helpful if someone from the city would put the overview. It's been stated that the state has made these laws and then the city can change them. And the ADU law is really different in the sense that the state came in and said, these are standards, sort of the maximum standard you can have. And it hasn't, people are used to the city making things more difficult. And really the only freedom the city has now is to make things easier. And I don't think that's been brought up. So people really need to go and read the state ordinance to know sort of what your most limiting constraints are. And then you can go to the city and say, the state says the city can restrict it to 16 feet, but the city can make it less restrictive. The state says you could have a maximum setback of 4 feet, but in the case of PG, they said 3 feet's enough. They could have said 0 feet if they wanted. And so making people understand that this is different in the sense that states really said you have to make this easy. And within this framework, the city is constrained in what it can do. And just having that sort of philosophical overview, I think, will help people understand that this really is different than other sort of planning processes in the past where the city has put lots of roadblocks up. They've taken them all away with the state law. So a quick overview of that might be helpful.
Does John or Allison take over and do this comment? Okay.
You know, I'm happy to talk about anything, obviously. You know, but the point of it was, why did the state do all this? Okay, they did this because they want to provide a diversity of housing, certainly more affordable housing, but a diversity of housing. We heard from Arlene that there were 5 million homes down. Well, people are still living here, right? There's those 5 million people that should be in those homes, or 10 million people should be in the home. They're still living somewhere. What the idea behind the ADU Act is to provide a diversity of housing and spread them out through our community. Why I feel public housing projects often don't work is you stick them all in one area, 100, 200 units, and it essentially stigmatizes and separates them from the community. That's just the opposite of what happens with an ADU. You're not putting all one economic group or all one social group in the 3 or 4 block radius. You're spreading them out throughout the community, right? And they're right there with an owner that lives in on that same property. There's one here and one there and one over on the block over there. And that owner is helping them meet the neighbors. That owner is now likely to stay in the neighborhood longer because he can afford to stay in, or she can afford to stay in. And an ADU evolves. It might start as rental income for the homeowner. Then it might become a place where their kids move after college. And then when their parents get elderly, it might be a place where they turn into a care unit for their parents. And finally, it might be a place that they move in and now rent out the big house they don't need anymore. And now they've got $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000 coming in from that front rental, a real income. So instead of moving to Oregon or Washington or wherever, they're able to stay in the community, and that's a benefit for us, right? We have their community memory, we have their community relationships. We don't lose all of those aspects that happens when we move outside the area. So for all those reasons, I think it's a great idea. The other big reason from the state's point of view is they don't have a big pot of money to build public housing or affordable housing, and it's often not beneficial when they do. So that's my opinion.
Yeah, and I will say Alyssa Kroger and I have talked about trying to maybe come up and create a list for people who want. I get calls all the time in the housing office, seniors, community members that can't afford to live here anymore, and PG is their home and they don't want to leave. And people call me all the time, I want the list of the ADUs. And I'm like, well, these are private properties. I cannot give you a list, you know, but I would like to, we've talked about creating a list of people who are interested in renting out their ADU, in helping out our community and people who want to stay here. You know, it's getting more and more expensive, and we want to help create affordable options. Do you have anything to say about that, Alyssa?
Just to piggyback, definitely something very interested at looking into putting together. That being said, once we kind of formalize what that process would look like, we would create a pretty straightforward disclaimer just so that folks who were signing on to being involved in that list, whatever it may turn into, they're aware that whatever information that they provide would potentially be made available to folks looking for that housing.
Thanks, Alyssa, appreciate it. And then one other little information tidbit that Ben had mentioned is that you can currently do a JADU and an ADU on your property. So if you're thinking about something like that, you could really, if you have a lot of space, you know, it's something to think about. So creating more housing opportunities and possibly income for yourself. So
I would just add to that, if you have an apartment complex or a multiplex property, you can build ADUs onto those. You can get 25% credit with the number of units that you have, and then build a detached unit too. So we're doing one of those. We're doing one of those projects in Monterey right now.
yep, lots to think about, lots of creative solutions and ideas here. I think we're almost out of questions. Any more further questions here? Should we get to the raffle? All right, Terry. She's got the raffle here. And then we've got some closing remarks here from Allison, our director. Oh, she's letting the mayor choose. That's awesome.
Always put it on the mayor. That's right. Okay, Bill, no favorites.
Number 9.
Number 9.
9. Yeah, turn it upside down.
Yeah. Oh, she's nice. Oh man, I'll date you one later.
9, 6, 8.
Alright. We should have, it was not so official. I picked it up last night. I was like, we gotta have some fun here. All right, Allison.
Thanks, Anastasia. Just in closing, I want to thank everybody for showing up today on your Saturday, especially our panelists. Thanks so much for your assistance. Again, Amanda. Amanda, our fantastic intern, has been with the city for a year and a half or so. She's been really amazing. She basically single-handedly put this workshop together. So huge shout out to her. And Amanda's aunt, Mary. Oh. Oh, okay, well, Aunt Mary brought flowers for Amanda. So again, thanks everybody for coming. If you do have specific questions about developing an ADU or a JADU on your property, call the planning department. We have 2 planners who are well versed. They're available Monday through Wednesday, 8 to 11:30. Those are our front counter hours. Did I say Monday through Thursday? Yes, Monday through Thursday. I meant Monday through Thursday. So thanks again for your participation.
Stop recording.